All right, thank you all for joining us for the fall community engagement meeting of the Bladensburg Bus Garage Reconstruction project. Next slide. Um, as always, this is not our first virtual meeting, but I do want to kind of cover our kind of meeting etiquette that we always ask that you all speak. And if we have designated Q&A portions during the meeting. We ask that if you would like to ask a question, you simply type your question in the chat and we will respond to them in order. If you would like to ask your question directly, please simply type your name in the chat, or I have a question in the chat, or use the raise hand function through the reaction, and we will call on you. um, if we're unable to get to all the questions in any section, we'll make sure to cover it in the next Q&A portion. With that, next slide, I will turn it over to Maya Nino to do the introductions. And good afternoon, Maya.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Denzel. And good afternoon, Bladensburg community members. Thank you for sharing your time with us this evening to bring you the latest updates and answer your questions from our Bladensburg Bus Garage Reconstruction project. My name is Maya Nino, and I'm a Senior Program Manager with WMATA's Project Delivery Office. With me this evening is Mr. Sean Pratt, the PMCM Project Manager, Ms. Jamila Mohammed Ingram, Deputy PMCM Project Manager, and Mr. Dan Goucher, the contractor PM with AHP. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Jamila for project overview and updates.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The next slide, please. All right. Yes, I'm Jamila, and I'll start with the project overview and updates. Next slide, please. So good evening. Again, thank you for joining. Our last meeting was held in August, where we provided a project overview, review of various building features, and we discussed construction progress and schedule. A recording of the meeting is available on the project website, along with questions and answers. Next slide, please. So for those of you joining for the first time, I'll provide a project overview and a few updates for those who have been here before. So the project includes a new maintenance facility and parking for 292 buses. Note that this number was refined from 300 as the design progressed. The project also includes charging infrastructure and equipment to support battery electric bus and a parking structure for 420 employees. So the project, it's being constructed in 3 phases, and last quarter we mentioned that the team was working to revise the schedule. So here are the updates per phase. The first phase, shown in blue, consists of the replacement of the maintenance facility. This will now take place from July 2021 to July 2025. During the second phase, shown in green, we will focus on building the employee parking garage, as well as some bus parking on the ground level. This will now take place from August 2025 to April 2027. And during the third phase in orange, we will complete the bus parking area. This now takes place from May 2027 to January 2028. You'll see that the overall project schedule was extended out. This is due to the contractor's reported workload and level of work left to complete the project. Next slide, please. We continue to maintain best practices for cleanliness and noise control at the construction site. This includes daily cleaning of work areas, waste receptacles and dumpsters stationed throughout the site, and tying down items to prevent flying debris during inclement weather. Also, the site contains Department of Energy and Environment approved water runoff controls. We still wash muddy construction vehicle wheels to help keep the streets clean and have access to an on-site street sweeper. We pick up trash weekly near the construction entrances as well. In regards to noise control, the typical weekday crew hours remain from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and we limit the hours of oversized load deliveries. Next slide, please. The site is bound by 25th Place Northeast, Bladensburg Road Northeast, Douglas Street Northeast, and the railroad tracks. For construction traffic flow, Gate 4 on 25th Place Northeast serves as the main construction entrance. Gate 1 is still in limited use. Gate 2 along Bladensburg Road Northeast remains as a secondary entrance. In regards to parking, the areas designated for contractors' personal vehicles are along V Street Northeast, and there is limited contractor parking near the properties on 28th Street Northeast. Next slide, please. So the latest update on our permitting status are for DC Water and Washington Gas. For DC Water, this includes starting a fourth review cycle for phase 2 and phase 3 plans and completing a water connection to the maintenance building. For Washington Gas, this includes installing a new gas line for the compressed natural gas yard and setting above ground pipework for this line. Next slide, please. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Donzel for questions.
Thank you, Jamila. Any questions regarding the project overview or update? Again, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat or in the reaction feature, if you could just simply ask to use your raise hand feature through reactions at the bottom of your screen. All right, seeing none at this time, I'll turn it over to Dan for the building feature review and the construction updates. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Next slide. So, like I said, if everybody remembers back from the August meeting, we had just gotten power to the site, and everybody was pretty excited about that. And since then, we've actually gotten all of our utilities. So, as Jamila mentioned, we got water now and gas. So, really, the next process in the schedule is commissioning. So, I wanted to take some time just to walk through commissioning. It is pretty technical. So I do apologize, kind of if some of the terminology, I'll try to kind of keep it simple, but really commissioning is just a systematic startup, testing and functional performance of all of the piece of equipment on the site. And then it goes a step beyond that. So like once everything in an individual basis is proven to function, then we have to test some of this stuff as a system. And then from there, once the system is tested, then we can actually start to look at interconnecting different systems into that as part of an integration test. So there are really 5 overall steps for commissioning. You have the startup, functional performance test, integration test, training, and then closeout. Next slide. So step 1 is the startup. And again, there's multiple steps within this. Each piece of equipment is started up. Sometimes it's started up by a manufacturer. A lot of times our trade partners are actually certified to go do it themselves. Within startup, we're also doing pre-functional checks. So this is, again, making sure all of the wiring is there, the piping is there, just kind of some pre-checks before we actually go and start it up. We also start to initiate the O&Ms. Start to look at different FPT procedures or functional performance test procedures once we go kind of get into the next step. So next slide. So like I mentioned, functional performance testing, or short, everybody kind of calls it FPTs. So once you get into this stage, again, multiple steps within here, we will do a pre-functional performance test. So this is basically your dress rehearsal, right? We want to make sure, since this is the first time this equipment has been started up on the site, we kind of want to internally start it up, make sure everything is good. And then sometimes issues pop up. We have to go correct those issues through the issue resolution process. Once from an internal perspective, we are satisfied, then we do call the commissioning agent. We will call WMATA, and then we have what we kind of consider the formal functional performance test. So that is witnessed by everybody. And then again, sometimes within there are still issues that pop up. So we go through the resolution issue resolution, and eventually we get to an acceptable functional performance test. Everybody signs off on it, and that one piece of equipment is good to go. Within that, there's some trending. So trending is simply just monitoring how that piece of equipment is performing throughout all of these steps. And again, we have to do this for each piece of equipment. So next slide. So the next kind of 3 steps are all kind of a little bit lumped into one, which we kind of are just your closeouts. So again, once all the system or all the pieces of equipment are functionally tested, then we go into the system. So I kind of elaborate on that a little bit later in this presentation. But really in this closeout final stages of the commissioning, again, multiple steps. We're setting up the warranty program. We're reviewing and finalizing all the O&Ms, which are operations and maintenance manuals. We're giving trainings. We're continuing to trend. We're resolving any lingering issues, really to get to final acceptance and sign off on this. So next slide. So you can see here's the overall flow chart. We kind of went through each one of those steps, but really you can kind of see how much is entailed in commissioning. Sometimes a lot of times that gets overlooked. We think once we get power or the utilities to the building, we can kind of snap our fingers and the building is kind of live and active and everything works. But again, very in depth, a lot of steps to kind of get through to get to that final acceptance. Next slide. So again, kind of breaking this down a little bit, let's just focus on mechanical. Sometimes it's a little bit easier. So just alone in our mechanical systems, some of the major pieces of equipment, and this is just the major, there's a lot of kind of smaller tertiary ones. So you got a chiller, we got chiller water pumps, we got 2 of those, we have a cooling tower, we have condensing water pumps, 2 of those, we have heat exchangers, we have rooftop units, we have fan coil units, air handling units, and air conditioning units. So you can see just from just in mechanical, that's a lot of pieces of equipment to run through all of those steps that we just listed out. And each one of those has to go through that. The 3D drawing here on the right, you can kind of see this is just one air handling unit. Each side, see the box in the middle there, and then all the ductwork kind of ties into that. And then you can see all of the different areas where I guess the air is diffused into the building. Each one of those has to be tested. We have to make sure it's called test and balance. We have to make sure that we're getting the appropriate air from each one of those registers or grills. And again, all of this fits into this commissioning world of making sure everything functions the way it should. Next slide. Oop, go back one, please. Thank you. So again, I know it's hard to read, and really the intent here is not to read and digest each line item, but this is just one of 8 pages from our mechanical equipment schedule. So you can just see how much equipment there is within this building that we need to go commission. Each of the other pages are just as crammed as this one. And I'm really just kind of reiterating the point that there is a lot to do between once we get power and utilities to actually turning over the building. With that, we'll kind of go through some progress photos. So next slide. So some progress on the site, kind of walk through the pictures here. So this is on the exterior. This is, we'll call it the north side up against the railroad tracks. We have talked about this in numerous meetings. The CXX wall is what we call it, the retaining wall. On the left-hand side, you can kind of see what everything looked like from the August meeting. In the middle there, you can see the progress of the retaining walls getting completed. And then on the right-hand side, you can see we're prepping for paving. We have finished the rest of the footers. Well, I guess as far as we can go in our current limits of disturbance. And again, paving is making its way there. So next slide. Here is the paving from the summer quarterly meeting there on the left. You can see we had just kind of started. And then in the middle picture there, that's the entire east side. So kind of my orientations, try to get them right. But the left-hand picture, the summer quarterly meeting, was the first lane closest to the building. You can see now we've completely finished all of the east side. And then on the far right picture, now we're progressing around the south side of the building. We're close to being finished with that side, and now we're working our way up the west side. Next slide. From inside the building, from the summer quarterly meeting, we talked a lot about some of the large equipment being delivered, like your elevators, your vehicle lifts, the bus wash. So that's what we're looking at here. So on the left-hand side, you can see what it looked like during the summer meeting. And then here on the right, you can see all the equipment for the bus wash. All 4 lanes are in. On the other side of that wall, there's the room with all the other, like the equipment, the detergents. That room is completed, fully built out. We're just making some final tie-ins and connections. Next slide. Here's the vehicle lifts. So kind of on the left-hand side is the in-progress photo. So these are the 60-foot vehicle lifts. These are what actually push the buses up into the air. You can see they're just pits, and then they drop in a bunch of components. And then here on the right-hand side, so all the lifts are in, all the control consoles are set, and the electricians have made all their final connections. And now we're just really working on the compressed air to actually drive the pistons that push the bus up. Next slide. Here are some interior shots. So again, a lot of finishes are going on in kind of, we'll call it area 2 or the core, where a lot of the administration happens. So the locker rooms, that's the picture on the left. All of the floor tile is in. The wall tile is at this point complete. Next stages there are installing all of the lockers, the benches, putting in the bathroom fixtures, and the toilet compartments. They're in the center picture. So this is actually on level 1 inside the maintenance bays. This is the supervisor, kind of the floor supervisor office space. You can see all the drywalls finished, windows in, ceiling grids in, really just driving towards all their finishes. And then the right-hand picture, that's your training room. That is the training room. Again, the picture kind of highlights the folding partition that can divide this room for a large training room or a smaller one. I'd like to, really just point out in all these pictures, you can see all the permanent lights are in and the permanent lights are on. So throughout the building, you can see that all of the actual lights are on. We do have, again, permanent power, and we are going through turning things on. Next slide. Elevator, another big piece of equipment. You can see on the left-hand side, it was really just a platform. And then on the right-hand side, all of the cab is actually built. All the doors on the floors are set, and the elevator is actually operational. Currently, right now, we're trying to obtain our construction permit, but the elevator does, again, go floor to floor, doors open. So we're making all of our final provisions and checks to get that construction permit, and then we'll eventually get the final permit. Next slide. Another system that has been started is all of our storage racks. So these are actually movable storage racks. The ones on the left-hand side are the taller of the two, and then the ones on the right-hand side are a little bit shorter. And kind of uniqueness about these is that they do tie into the fire alarm system, so that in the event a fire alarm or a fire event happens, these actually go to a specified position so that if someone is getting parts, they're not necessarily crushed. So again, going back to what I was saying about commissioning early on, I do have to commission this, right? So this would be part of my systems or integration testing, where the fire alarm would have to be tested, make sure all that works, and then this then has to be integrated into that. So even something as simple as just this storage rack does also tie into commissioning. I believe turn it back over to Donzel for questions. Next slide.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions regarding the building feature review and the construction updates? Again, if you have a question, please just type it in the chat at any time, or type "I have a question" in the chat so that we can bring you off mute. Or if you can also just use the raise hand feature through the reactions at the bottom of the screen. And again, we will bring you off mute to ask any questions. Any questions? Okay, hearing none, I will turn it over to Jamila for the look ahead, what to expect.
Thank you, Donzel. So let's look ahead to the next quarter. Next slide, please. In the month of December, for the compressed natural gas yard, we plan to set the generator and terminate fuel piping. We will continue paving around the site, work on finishes in the maintenance building, and perform testing and commissioning as Dan described. In the new year, we'll continue site paving, testing and commissioning, and work on placing loose equipment and furniture in the maintenance building. And in February, we'll amp up site work with decking for the ramp, the guard booth median, plus installations for light poles, closed circuit television, and security fencing. For the maintenance building, we'll continue placing furnishings and equipment. We will also continue with painting, testing, and commissioning. Next slide, please. Here are the major milestones we have in place for the new project schedule. I'll highlight a few of the main ones, including completing the new maintenance facility in the third quarter of 2025, commencing demolition for phase 2 in the fourth quarter of 2025, completing the new parking garage in the second quarter of 2027, and overall project completion in the first quarter of 2028. Also, we'll continue to update the community in future meetings, especially in regards to any changes due to battery electric bus design. Next slide, please. For community engagement, please have a look at our fall community newsletter released in October. Also, did you know that Metro has a college intern program? During the summer, students can gain work experience and engage in professional development opportunities. So please visit the website for further information on the application process and program criteria. And with that, I will turn it over to Maya.
Thank you, Jamila. Next slide, please. Thank you. Just to follow up on our project between the community quarterly meetings. If you are new to the community, new to our meetings, please sign up. Please go to our website, wamada.com/Bladensburg Bus Garage and sign up for project updates, newsletters, and additional information the team may push. You can also reach out to us if you have any questions at our email address, bladensburgbusgarage@wamada.com. And we'll be announcing the next quarterly community meeting as we get closer for the winter 2024. With that, I'll turn it over to Denzel.
Thank you, Maya. We do have a question from Steve Banishek asking, is the battery electric bus charging infrastructure scheduled? I guess the installation or design schedule. And I don't know if...
Sure, I'll take that. Oh, go ahead, Maya.
I guess I have a question about scheduled. We are still progressing the design. We're getting close to the final. So once we have the design done, we'll obviously look at the schedule, the overall, and the impacts to the project, and we will incorporate it in the master schedule. And we'll be providing updates in the follow-up meeting.
Okay, so it sounds like at this point, the design is still happening. And once that is reviewed, approved, then you'll be able to schedule that into the overall project timeline. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we'll have to look at the procurement, the long leads, we'll get the dates, and then we'll look at the overall timeline and any impacts.
Okay, and I guess his follow-up question is, and I think you covered this, Jamila, what is the ETA for project completion or design ETA finish, more specifically? Or I'm sorry, I conflated. He's not asking about the project completion, he's asking about the design, estimated time of completion for the design process, Maya, of the BEB.
Yeah, I would say spring of next year, we're getting closer to 100%, but we still have to go to IFC, issue for construction. We have to get approval by the Department of Building. So I would say early spring of next year. We're shooting for better, but that's our goal.
Excellent. And like you said, we will provide updates in the future quarterly meetings as we get more information is available.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions at this time? I have a question from Dan Pronio asking, what is happening with the closure of the circle at Douglas Street? It will affect the business of Northeast Ironworks.
So we're currently, sorry, Donzo, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so currently we I think in December last year, the Office of the Surveyor sent out the notification letters to get the no objections from all the authorities. We had to do an easement for DC Water and DDOT. That process is coming to a close, and so once we have finalized that, which should be in the next few weeks, it will start the legislative process. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, Sean. And Dan, if you have a follow-up question, feel free to type it in or again, raise your hand. It doesn't seem to be any, I'll give a moment to type. While we wait, are there any other questions before we conclude this quarterly meeting? Okay, the follow-up is, will there be a truck turnaround where the circle once was for Douglas Street?
Yeah, there's per the plat that has been circulated by the Office of the Surveyor, there's the alley that's been added for the truck turnaround. The alley is currently in the WMATA property, or the property they've just acquired, but that was included in the plat that was distributed.
And thank you, Sean. I'm asking as it's being updated. So I guess it was primarily, will it accommodate truck deliveries in that new design?
Yeah, it's designed to accommodate truck deliveries. That's the sole purpose of the alley. That there was no other reason to include it.
Excellent. Thank you for that. All right. Any other questions before we end this meeting? All right. Seeing no additional questions, no hand raised, no I have questions to bring anyone off mute. Thank you all for joining us for this meeting. Again, this information will be added to the project website on the WMATA, or as a part of the WMATA websites. And again, we will update you for the next meeting. In the comment section, you will see an evaluation on this meeting. It takes about 2 minutes to fill out. If you could please fill that out, we would greatly appreciate it. Good night, and thank you for joining.